SEC championship game this Saturday, Alabama versus Georgia, 4 p.m. Eastern time kickoff from the Georgia Dome. Scratch that. The Georgia Dome has apparently died. It is no longer with us. And so Mercedes-Benz Stadium will have to do. 10 of the last 11 SEC champions are either Alabama or Georgia. And Stats and Info tells me one of these teams has to win this game. Therefore, 12 or 11 out of the last 12 SEC champs will have come either Bama or Georgia, and the only exception, 2019 LSU. Some are asking, why does this game matter? Why does this game matter, Josh? Well, number one, it's the SEC championship game. Do we need to get Kirby Smart on the horn? Kirby Smart is on the very short list of candidates if we ever decide to hire a head coach at Pate State. Guy just gets it. Longtime veteran of the show, appeared on the show many times, but he sat there the other day and said, it's the SEC championship. Like, don't you people care about that anymore? And then someone asked him about all these injuries. He said, well, if you worry about injuries, you don't even practice. You get a scared football team if you're worried about injuries. So it matters because it's the SEC championship. It also matters because the winner of this thing is going to get a first-round bye. Yes, even if it's Alabama. And the third thing is that gives you some rest. And that is especially imperative for both of these teams because they are beat to death. I think they'll both have 11 on the field at the time Saturday, but I don't really know. Kirby's 1-7 versus Alabama as the head coach at Georgia. So we already saw this game happen. We were at the game in Athens. How much does September matter? How much does that first game matter? Because we got a couple of games this Saturday that are rematches of regular season games. That first game, Bama was just lethal on third down. They were 13 of 19. Georgia was 2 of 8. Now, a lot of times when you have an outcome, any given outcome, the winning team probably did some things above and beyond what they average doing in that stat category. So with Alabama, 13 of 19. I mean, they're pretty good on third down, but they're not always that good on third down. Georgia, 2 of 8. They're not always that bad on third down. Both of them are top 30 in that category. When you have the rematch, the age-old question is always, do we have a progression and regression back to the mean? If you do, big advantage Georgia here. There's no guarantee it happens. That's why it's a key to victory and not an outright prediction. Ty Simpson was 16 of 24 in this game. If anyone remembers, it wasn't that long ago, he sliced Georgia up pretty good. He was 16 of 24 in the first half against Georgia. He had 196 and 2 touchdowns in the first half against Georgia. Now, anyone who's watched Alabama offensively as of late would understand with their own eyes, Ty Simpson, not bad, just seems to have regressed a little bit. Probably banged up. Everyone is at this point. But the play has regressed a little bit. He's missing Josh Cuevas, who pound for pound is one of the most important offensive players they've had. Georgia will shed no tears because they're missing important players as well. Jam Miller, I don't know if he's going to play. If he does play, far less than 100%. Again, no tears from Georgia. Anyway, pass pro has been an issue because of that, especially against Auburn last week. So again, that's one of the keys to being really lethal on third down. That's one of the keys to being really lethal through the air in the first half like he was the first time. Do we have a regression to the mean? And then when we talk about pressure, let's talk about Georgia. The Georgia pass rush is the most important facet of this game to me. It's a fundamental difference that could spell the difference between the first game and this game. They didn't sack Ty Simpson the first game. They didn't even pressure him enough in the first game. But their havoc rate over the last half of the season has been over 20% 2 of their last 3 games, and really could have been against the FCS dial-it-up game, but they chose not to. But against Texas and Georgia Tech, if you watched Georgia, they got after the quarterback to a degree that they did not in the first half of the season. And that just goes back to the whole Kirby Smart never stop coaching, never stop working, never stop scheming, never stop developing, even during the season, different angles, different approaches. And it's just, you're not going to reinvent yourself on the fly during the season, but what you can do is you can just keep coaching the you-know-what out of your team to find fractions of inches and squeezing the sponge that much harder to just get a couple of more drops out of it. Because in these kinds of games, like they play with Alabama, they're always one-possession games. This game absolutely profiles as that. Georgia's favored by 2.5. So, hey, do me one favor right here. look down. Are you subscribed to the channel? If you are, thank you. If you're not, please click subscribe. It helps us keep the show free and free of corporate interference. All right, that's it for me. Back to the clip. There are 2 game breaker spots that I'll have a close eye on in this one. They're actually both at the receiver position, which is kind of weird if you think about the history of these 2 programs. It used to be Kirby and Nick Saban, and it used to be line of scrimmage, man. Who can run the ball, and each of them looked the other in the eye, and it was like they were looking in the mirror. And you fast forward several years, and Alabama's ability to break this game, if they do, is kind of like it was the first game. Alabama, they labored their way to a little over 100 yards rushing, and they did stay committed to it, and that kept the passing game open enough. But Jeremy Bernard, Isaiah Horton's come on a lot for them. I got no clue what's happening with Ryan Williams. Latsier Brooks has really stepped up. Those are game breaker types. That is a game breaker type unit if Ty Simpson has time to operate. And they're going to have to come through because there aren't many other paths for Alabama. Now, they have really struggled to consistently hit the deep ball, and they've struggled to run the ball, which means you really got to thread the needle. You really got to be precise in the underneath and intermediate passing game. That's the path for Alabama. Now, it's not a mystery. It has been for a while. With Georgia, Zachariah Branch is a very important player in this game. I stood there last week and watched Alabama seem to be in control of a game defensively, and then there are 2 huge, like yards after catch explosive plays. And you sit there and think to yourself as you're watching the replay, once you know Alabama wins the game, you're thinking, who on Georgia's team can do that? Oh, Zachariah Branch, yeah, absolutely. Probably more so than anybody Auburn has. So it doesn't matter if you've got control of the game if you just casually let a couple of plays spring for 55, 60 yards after the catch. That guy can do that. Alabama secondary throttled Georgia down a little bit, a lot actually, in passing numbers the first go-around here. But Georgia still had 227 on the ground. And I expect Georgia to have a fair amount of success running the ball again in this game. I don't know if you just outright win the game running the ball. Now, full credit to that staff at Georgia. Like, they've done a really good job resurrecting that ground game, and it's been good enough. It's been plenty good enough this year. If that's still there, if the ground game is still there, don't have to run it for over 200, but just run it effectively enough, that's a big deal. This is where that Georgia center spot matters. Drew Bobo's status has been very much up in the air. I would just lean towards he's not playing, and if they get him late in the week, that's a pleasant surprise. But you think about the individual matchups here. You think about what it takes for Georgia to operate efficiently, offensively, and the difference in a redshirt freshman starting against, the likes of Tim Keenan at Alabama are. And it could be anything from functionality in the snapping game to run fits to disruption on that front to disruption in timing of passes and rhythm and whatnot. All of that stuff can be a big factor here, but the injury situation is a huge deal both ways. I could just as easily say, Bama was so lethal on third down. Who was their number one safety valve really this side of Jeremy Bernard down the stretch? It was Josh Cuevas. They don't expect to get him back for this game. That's why it looks so labor-intensive against Auburn. They didn't have one of their most dependable third-down weapons. Not to mention the little dip you take in pass pro with 80 not being on the field. So the injury situation is really tough for both teams, and that's for the guys that will miss the game. They're going to be guys on the field that probably have little business being on the field. You got a mentality of a warrior. It's a conference championship game by this point. The other thing to remember, the first go-around in this one was big staff win for Alabama. I've mentioned this with Texas and Georgia when they played a few weeks ago. When we get, they're about like 5 or 6 programs in college football that when they play, I almost don't concern myself so much with matchups. It's a staffing thing for me. Texas, Georgia, just the same as Alabama, Georgia, in that they all get to choose how they do it. College football does not dictate that Alabama or Georgia have to play and recruit any one way. They get to have whatever style they want offensively and defensively. They get to define whatever identity they want their program to have. They pretty much get to recruit any kind of athlete they want. They've got really good NIL resources. So they get to build themselves however they want to. Nothing's off limits. So it's all about culture versus culture. It's all about approach versus approach. And Georgia has just stomped Texas's approach, and they've outstaffed Texas a couple of times. It wasn't that emphatic, but I thought DeBoer and his staff kind of did that to Kirby the first go around. You don't say that very often about Kirby Smart in Georgia. Rarely do you ever say it. So my question is, do we end up saying it twice? Like, DeBoer's still perfect against Lanning, Kirby, and Sark in his career. Is that going to continue here? Let's take a look at what the model thinks. FanDuel's got Georgia by 2.5. Model a little higher on Georgia than FanDuel is. We cross 3. The Pate State model, the little in-house model. It's not a little model. The in-house model here has Georgia by 4. I cannot emphasize this enough. I have no feel on the game. I've watched every snap of both of these teams, maybe outside of the FCS games, and we have arrived in December, and I really have no feel on the game. The injury situation especially muddies it up for me. So when I don't have a feel all that much on the game, I'll just go with the model. The model says Georgia wins and covers. I'll say Georgia wins and covers. I also said that the first go-around in Athens and whiffed on that one. So who knows? What I do know is really looking forward to it. As a kid who grew up on the Chattahoochee River, which is the river that divides Alabama and Georgia, it always means a little bit extra for me when those two teams play. The current odds to win the national championship: Georgia's 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, Alabama's 8th. And whoever wins this one, I think, gets a first-round bye. I would also just highly suggest, as you guys are checking out the ABC broadcast of that game, might want to flip over to ESPN a time or two. Who knows what could be happening over there? I'm told an announcement may be coming tomorrow on that front.